What up, everybody? I hope everybody has a good weekend this weekend. It's your friendly neighborhood menace. And what are we here to do? We're here to always destroy the narrative. We're always here to get in the way of their narrative. And before we do that, the police report came out. So if you are still supporting the thug murderer of Austin Metcalf, you are, by definition, a scumbag. You're a piece of scum. It's worse than we thought. It's like this kid is so low IQ. Like, he committed every act of a perpetrator that committed a murder could do in like 30 seconds. So before we do that, though, I want to take a look at these clips of Matt Walsh's show from the other day, because he's been getting a lot of heat for going in on this subject. And I figured he was going to address this because on Twitter it went nuts. And these people they can't stand the way when facts get in their feelings. But we're going to look at a couple TikToks first because, I just can't stand white liberal women.
And I just like this one because the account is called Empathy Wins, but it apparently did not win in this video. Watch.
Matt Walsh and all of America know that most school shooters are young white men. Matt Walsh and all of America know that most serial killers in the United States are white men. So much so that our own writers of horror fiction are always casting the slasher in a slasher film as a white man to match the statistics.
I'm sorry.
Retard.
Let me see if I have this right. You think that when Hollywood is making slasher horror films, that they are studiously making sure that the proportion of white killers in those movies matches real-life crime statistics?
Idiot.
That's how you think this works? You think Friday the 13th is a documentary? Well, just to clear things up, no, that's not how it works. Hollywood always casts white men as the killers because if they cast black villains, then people like you will throw a hissy fit.
They can't.
If there was a slasher,
because it's racist, y'all. Marvel cast that dude Kang, but they tried to make him a sympathetic villain. If they ever cast a black character in any way that's supposed to be evil, supposed to be bad, they will make him like a sympathetic character. Like, oh, he's not at heart, in his core, he's a good person. No, they did. Like, dude, I want to see someone that's bad all the way. That's the whole reason I like going to the movies. I want to see a dude that's like rotten to the core, because that's what makes it cool. And especially if they have an arc where they have a character arc where they're rotten to the core and then they become a good person and like end up maybe sacrificing themselves for people other than themselves. That makes a great movie. But Hollywood doesn't understand that anymore.
horror film where you've got a black killer killing white people, people like you would lose your minds. Unless at the end of it, it turns out that the black killer was justified because all the people that he was killing were racist. And that's the only time that it would be okay.
It's okay then.
In reality, according to the Radford University FGCU serial killer database, between the years of 1900 and 2010, 52% of serial killers were white and 40% were black. That means that black people are hugely overrepresented among serial killers and whites are underrepresented, which means that there are more black serial killers per capita than.
I was just gonna say, in case you didn't say that, it's for per capita, because they're only 13% of the population. If you split that in half, 6% are male, about roughly 6%. And you got kids, so 6% are that much of serial killers. That's insane.
Actually, in fact, two of the deadliest serial killers this century were the Beltway snipers, which I remember that well because I lived.
And most of them are in Chicago and live on O Block.
General area when this was happening, shot and killed 17 people in 2002. They were both black. So your facts are just wrong. There's not much else to say. Let's play one more so that now we can finally deal with, because this has come up in almost every video now, is the mass shooters. Mass shooters
They're
are
white.
white.
They're all whiteys.
We'll finally deal with that claim. Watch.
Matt Walsh is a bloated, rotten corpse, but he is a perfect reflection of everything wrong with American conservatives and American racists. Because white people shoot up schools at a larger percentage than anyone else. But if I go around assuming that white culture leads to school shootings, that would be an insane statement to make. But it's not insane that when one boy, teenage boy, stabs another teenage boy to defunct an entire culture of people, that's not insane. White people are the only ones allowed to be individuals who have their own problems and who can be blamed individually for issues. Because the moment...
So full of shit. White people always have to be held accountable for everything every white person does.
A black person does anything wrong, now the whole black race has to jump in.
All right, of course, white people are never blamed for anything as a group.
Yeah.
That never happens. When's the last time you heard anyone blame white people as a group? It's not like blaming white people as a group is the favorite pastime of people like the one in that video there. And I'm
getting really tired of people calling white people colonizers. The appropriate term is conquerors. Start using that term, conquerors. I know you don't like to use that one, but it's just a fact. And facts don't care about your feelings.
Mass shootings. According to a Washington Post database, 38% of mass shooters, 38% are white, which means, again, that white people are vastly underrepresented among mass shooters. 29% are black, which means black people are, again, greatly overrepresented. There are more black mass shooters per capita than there are white. And get this, if you narrow it down to school shootings in particular, meaning shootings that happen at a school, right? That's a school shooting at a school, regardless of the casualty count, shooting at a school. Well, you'll find that according to a 2023 study titled Characteristics and Obtainment Methods of Firearms Used in Adolescent School Shootings, 58% of school shooters were black. Only 28% were white. Again, there are many more black school shooters per capita than white. In fact, not even per capita.
Okay, I want to address this really quick because I spent an hour on AI arguing with it, and they have found a way to manipulate these demographics so that it's so hard to get this information. So what they do is they take school shootings and they lump them in with juveniles and adults. So when you ask, it won't automatically separate it. Even though you ask for juveniles, it'll still give you full ones, and then it'll say that the white people are the bigger demographic. And then when you say, no, I just want juvenile school shootings, and then it'll still say that white people are the demographic. And then you have to say, I'm not talking about murders at school. You have to say all school shootings, whether anyone was hit, whether there was any casualties, whether there was anything. You have to really be specific, and you have to name all these studies he's talking about because AI will just totally disregard them. And then once I did that, then it broke it down per capita, and it is overwhelmingly true. It's crazy. And if you think about all the gang shootings, they don't report those as school shootings because they just say, oh, that's a gang shooting, that's gang activity. They try to separate every shooting that black people do so that it doesn't get into a category, but all the white people just get lumped in. They just throw them all in. So it's just crazy how they try to manipulate the demographics. And it's like the 29% he's talking about. So those are juveniles. That's not even adults. So that's like a super small demographic. It's crazy.
School shooters, there are more black school shooters, period, than white.
Yeah.
So
it's insane.
Those are the facts. And going back to the other video about Hollywood and movies, the fact that everyone assumes that all mass shooters and all school shooters are white, that it's a uniquely white thing, or that white people are more likely to be mass shooters or school shooters. People assume that entirely because of Hollywood movies portraying it that way, and because the news media will just ignore mass shootings and even school shootings that are perpetrated by non-white people for the most part.
If it involves a black on black crime, the media, they don't give a fuck. They will not report on it. So now we're going to get into the police report. And, everybody has a take on this. I told you the police report had already come out. They had already filed it. That means that everything was already said and done. The witnesses had given their statements, and this is way worse than we thought, man. This kid is definitely going to cell block D in the B, and his B is going to be bleeding every night. And I hope that black people are proud that they encourage this behavior and that they are cheering this on and being a cheerleader squad for this fucking murderer. And, it comes a time when you really got to recognize that there's something wrong in the culture that we live in today. And if it doesn't get course corrected, it's going to keep going the way it's going.
This dude that needs to rot in hell, they released his police report.
Yeah, he is guilty of sin.
Yeah. You know what's crazy? I looked over this police report.
Mm-hmm.
They never recovered the weapon.
Right. I didn't see that mentioned anywhere.
Maybe he hooped it, because he better get used to hooping, because he's going to be hooping a whole lot of stuff in the pen. And he threw that shit. This report is insane.
If it's for self-defense, why did she flee? And
Yeah.
why are you discarding the weapon?
Yeah.
Let me start from right here. I immediately left my office and ran across the Staley Middle School parking lot towards a southwest entrance into the stadium. As I entered the stadium, 2 high school age students informed me that the victim was on the north end of the stadium by the bleachers under a Memorial High School tent. I did not identify these students. Next, I proceeded towards the north end of the stadium, visitor side on foot. As I got closer to the north end, I could see the Memorial High School tent with multiple individuals under the tent. Once I arrived onto the north side bleachers, an adult male who was on the track pointed out the suspect. I was not able to identify that witness. Dude probably took off running. The individual that was pointed out to me was a black male, the usual suspects, wearing a gray hooded. Should have said that.
Yeah. No, you should have said that.
Wearing a gray hooded sweater and dark colored Nike pants. The suspect at this point was on track on the north end. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instruction to keep his hands up in the air. During this time, the suspect said verbally out loud, "I was protecting myself." Idiot. It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment.
What?
Yeah, just
an idiot.
Yeah.
yeah,
Dumbass.
low IQ. I asked him if he had any weapons, and he said no. I patted him down for weapons while we were walking along the fence, and I did not locate any on his person.
You didn't have a weapon. You just stabbed somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, he threw that shit.
I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied, towards an area where there was an opening in the fence that led off the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect also said he put his hands on me. I then detained the suspect in handcuffed behind his back, and had him sit down on the.
So that low IQ idiot in the last video I did on this, he said he's black and he needs to bring a weapon with him. So according to his logic, white people need to start bringing firearms with them everywhere they go, just in case they encounter a black person. According to his logic, not mine. You see what I'm saying? Because we have to assume now that we could get stabbed at any moment if we happen to say the wrong thing that sets a black person off, and they could kill us. So to his logic, we have to assume that a black person is always going to have a weapon to try and kill a white person. So a white person has to carry a weapon now to just to protect them in case they try to kill them for saying the wrong thing to them. Okay, let's go.
Officer Ricky had arrived on scene at that time. I conducted another pat down of his person and then searched his person, and after he gave me consent, no weapons were located. While the suspect sat on the ground, I advised that I had the alleged suspect. The suspect then responds and says, "I'm not alleged, I did it."
What?
Yeah, so
Bro. I'm not alleged, I did it. They didn't even ask you what you did. You just keep giving them information. What do they always tell you? You have the right to remain silent. Like, you have the right to remain silent, but you chose to just that's a sign of like a guilty conscience. Oh my God, and like I understand. I've been there, like, but and I just can't believe that people are defending this, and I should be able to grasp that fact, but I just can't.
Even recover the weapon. So if you feel like you was in the right, where's the weapon? Why did you
Yeah.
hide it?
Yeah,
You
why
should have
did you
kept
take
it
off
on you.
running?
Yeah. You know what's weird about this whole incident? They wanted him to leave the tent. It was he was sitting under the wrong tent.
Right. I think he might have been in that tent because it was raining or something.
Yeah, but I get that. But there's other tents you can go under. They didn't want you under that tent.
Like
They
his
wanted to
own high
protect their
school?
valuables that was in the tent.
Right.
Right? And he refused to leave the tent. He decides to leave the tent after he stabbed someone. If you really want to stay in the tent, why didn't you just stay there?
Yeah, dude.
If that was
You want to
that
be
big of
there
a
that
deal to you.
bad.
Yeah, this whole story doesn't. I mean,
You should have occupied it like the college kids do for all the Palestine rallies. They just occupy areas that's totally okay.
it's just horrible. I'm gonna go. So they didn't even recover the weapon. So I'm gonna read what the meat and potatoes of the report. Oh, here it is right here. The victim, Austin, and the suspect, who was later identified as Carmelo Anthony. Anthony was from Centennial High School and was sitting under the Memorial High School tent. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under their team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." So he's like provoking him.
He grabbed the bag before he even touched him. You see that? He grabbed the bag before he touched him, grabbed something, and then said, after he had the weapon, then he provoked him.
He escalated it.
Right. So he challenged his when two boys or men, when you challenge somebody's masculinity, that's what he's doing.
Oh, and you saw your reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Austin had told Anthony that he needed to move out from under the team's tent, and Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Anthony really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Anthony. And then Anthony told Austin to punch him and see what happens. Again, provoking.
Yeah.
A short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled out what they redacted us, the witness's name, recalled as a black knife, and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. So it's like they wanted you to leave. You didn't want to leave.
Right.
So you stayed until you got what you wanted.
Yeah.
Right.
In my opinion.
Yeah, you provoked him, yeah. You totally cannot claim self-defense when you instigate, provoke, or escalate a situation.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. Whenever there's a self-defense defense you're trying to make, you got to first, you can't escalate, but you got to look for a way out of the situation.
Yeah, you got to de-escalate.
Yeah, you got to flee.
You have to have, if you got an avenue to flee, you're supposed to.
And they gave you an out to flee, leave.
Yeah, they
You
told
wanna
you to
leave.
go. You
So
could have
your
just left.
self-defense goes right out the window.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. He has no self-defense.
Yeah.
You escalated. You had an out, and you didn't take that avenue to
Exactly.
leave. So,
Yeah.
And then you.
Just for context, we're going to show where in a case where two people get into confrontation, where you use force escalation when it's not necessary. And guess what? The white guy is the suspect.
No, that really pissed
All
him
you
off.
racists out there.
He's looking at the license plate. No handicap.
So he's trying to hassle some chick.
Yeah, and there's a black woman sitting in the car, so that really sets him off. It triggers him.
And he's sitting there
Yeah,
arguing
let me
with
go
her.
ahead because let me go to the part when he comes out.
Yeah.
Here, coming out the store, he sees
Here he comes.
this man is like
He's pointing his finger in his wife's face.
chastising her,
Yeah.
Boom.
pushes him down to the ground.
Knocks him down, right?
He's on the ground. He's walking away.
Walks away.
Takes out his gun. Shoots
Boom.
him.
Shoots him.
Yeah.
He was claiming self-defense.
Yeah, you
You
can't do
can't
that.
instigate or provoke a situation.
Well, he didn't provoke it.
You can't do that. He was already walking away. He should have just called the cops and let the police handle it. And that was basically a retaliation. Like, you pushed me, now I'm going to shoot you. You can't do that. You can't use your age. You can't do none of that stuff. That's in the wrong. Okay? All right. So now that I think I'm 100% justified in every avenue of this whole debacle, man. I mean, this is the last video I'm going to do on this. No, I just really hope that black people are proud that they encourage this kind of behavior, and they want to see more young blacks stabbed and hurt and go to jail and attack white people so that they can go back to cell block B and the D and make their booty hole bleed until they just can't ever sit down ever again. Let me know what you think. Modern Menace, I'm out. Peace.